Here we are on the front of our Grand Design Reflection. We're going to do a walkthrough tutorial just like you would get on the day of delivery, going through the operation of our unit so you have something to refer back to. There is also a deeper dive on some of these components as well as other components if your name brand differs in our Helpful Hacks section on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share, do all those awesome things so you can help support the channel and we can continue to do this. On the front of our unit, of course, we have our kingpin. We also have our 7-way plug right here. That 7-way plug is going to transfer all of your lights from your towing vehicle to the fifth wheel on here, as well as our battery charge line that'll pull off the alternator of the vehicle and charge your battery while you're traveling down the road. Last thing you'll have is your brake controller. Once it initiates off the brake pedal, it will send a brake signal through here to the brakes on the trailer. Well, speaking of brakes, we're also going to have our breakaway cable right here. This breakaway cable needs to be fastened to the truck itself, not to the hitch. The reason being is if something ever happens to the hitch, fifth wheel hitch in the bed of the truck, this is going to separate, pull off of the truck. We want that pin to pull out of that breakaway box and activate the brakes on our trailer. Now that can only happen if we have a good 12-volt system on our fifth wheel, meaning that we have a good solid charged battery. If we don't, then that system is not going to activate. We also need to make sure that pin is inserted in that box at all times, otherwise it will be locking up and activating those brakes when you don't want them to. In our front pass-through bay, we have our Furrion solar charge controller. Of course, we have our solar panels up on the roof. This is going to convert our solar power into a charging power for our battery system on our unit. There are a few settings on there in regards to what type of batteries you have, so on and so forth. I'd refer to the owner's manual just to be specific about different types and everything. It's a little bit to go into on that kind of stuff. So just know that all that stuff's in your owner's manual to get a better idea for your solar system. To the right of it, we're going to have our solar prep disconnect. Now what that's going to do is basically just disconnect our solar from our unit. In the event that we don't want to use it for whatever reason, we can go ahead and just shut it off, and that is going to completely disconnect it from our battery system, so it's not going to charge our system or anything. Now that is going to be separate from our actual battery disconnect. So if our battery disconnect is off, then this solar system is on. It's still going to connect to our batteries and charge our batteries off of that solar system, even if our disconnect is off, so no concern there. As far as our actual battery disconnect goes, it literally does what it says. It disconnects the battery from our RV system. We want to use this when we store our unit unplugged so we can conserve the battery power in here. Anytime we have our unit plugged in, whether it's storage or use, whatever the case may be, we want to make sure that switch is on. So the converter system, which is our battery charging system, will actually go ahead and charge that battery when we're plugged in. In here, we're going to have some fuses and resettable fuses that are thermal. They're going to automatically reset, so some slide outs and stuff operate off of some of these things. If your slide out stops, the electric ones, then you want to give it about 30 to 60 seconds to kind of cool down and then maybe go operate it again. There's not necessarily a whole lot in here that needs to be maintained. So don't worry about it. That's just where everything is. In the event that you have to go that deep into troubleshooting for 12-volt power, you would come here. We also have a set of fuses and stuff inside the unit we'll go over later. This is our actual converter, that charging system we spoke about. It's going to change our 110 power, which is coming in right here, to 12-volt power going right here out to our battery. That's going to go ahead and keep our batteries charged up. We do see a couple of fuses right here. We can check in the event this system isn't outputting correctly. This is going to operate whenever you're plugged in. If not, it's not going to operate, right? You have a little cooling fan on there, you'll hear operating whenever it is plugged in. Over to the left over there, we do have our inverter prep system. An inverter is going to change 12-volt power to 110 power. In the event we don't have a plug-in, want to operate a couple of small 110 appliances, we can do that. You are pre-wired for that system. And then we're also going to have our LCI leveling system right here. Our main control panel for all that is right above us, and that is where all your jacks and everything are going to go to as far as that system is concerned. We do have a few fuses on there. In the event it's not working, those operate our individual jacks. We do have other videos on our jacks and how it operates. Of course, we're going to go over the operation of this one too. Those will be under our Helpful Hacks section. Now I'll give you a quick turn right here, and we have our actual front individual leveling jacks. These are for our landing gears. On the bottom right here, we do have a little cap. That bottom cap would come off, and in there is our override. We have a 3/8 nut in there. You put that socket on a drill and you can manually run this jack up and down. Now, of course, these are individual, one on each side. Before you do that, you do want to disconnect your 12-volt plugs before you override that system. You only want to do this if you're having an issue with the jack, can't figure it out. You would go ahead and put that in there, and you would just run that drill in forward or reverse, depending on which way you need to operate that jack. Also want to add, with our leveling system, we want to make sure we have at least 6 holes showing on these landing gears. Otherwise, you're going to run out of stroke on these jacks in order to level your unit. So make sure we're using at least 6 holes. We can see them, count them on there, and you won't run into any errors as far as trying to level your system in regards to that. So here on the driver's side of our unit, we have one of 2 propane tanks. We'll have one on this side, one on the opposite side, and we'll also have our dual propane regulator to operate that. Idea is you have both tanks on. That dual propane regulator has a selector switch where you can choose which one you want to be your primary. It'll have an indicator on that regulator, green or red, letting you know it's full or empty. When that tank runs out of gas, it will automatically swap over to that other tank. Indicator will read red, letting you know it's empty. And once again, pull from that secondary so you don't lose flow while you're cooking or heating up your unit. Now we can go ahead and swap that selector over to our secondary tank and have the former primary tank refilled. In our pass-through compartment, of course, we have our control center right here and our LCI electric leveling system. We'll go over those, but we also have our tire link pre-wired into here. That is our Lippert tire link system. If we want to purchase the monitor and the sensors to upgrade, we monitor the tire pressure and the temperature on those tires while we're traveling. Next, we'll go ahead and hit that leveling system as well as our control center. So we can see our electronic leveling system right here, made by Lippert. If we kick it on, we can see on our main display right here, we're going to have our battery voltage. Whenever we hit our arrows, it brings us to our auto hitch height. Our auto hitch height is used after we have been camping. Basically, this will bring us back to the point that the trailer was at whenever we disconnected from our hitch on the truck, so you don't have to guess what level it needs to be at. If you want to use that feature, you just hit enter and it will begin to extend those jacks out and put it at the height that it was in before you went into that auto level. Our next one is auto retract all. We would go to that once we are hooked up to the truck. We can hit enter and it will retract all of our jacks. Now you should definitely double check your 5th wheel hitch and ensure that you are locked in before you do this, because once you pull away, all the weight and everything relies on that 5th wheel hitch at that point. So be sure you're locked in good before you hit that auto retract all. Our next one is auto retract rear. If we want to just bring up the rear jacks and leave the front landing jacks down, we can go through that. And our last one is manual level. Manual level is if we wanted to go in, hit enter, and we can see right here we have our degree marks. Now 0 is our ultimate goal. That would mean that we're level. We would use these functions right here to raise those jacks. You'll have orange lights that pop up in the corners to let you know that those are indicating the areas where it is low. So if this blinking light on the left hand side is orange, then that means that our left side is low. Same thing on the right, front, and rear. So we would just raise that until that light goes out, and eventually once we hit that 0 mark, our green light in the middle will indicate that we are leveled out. If we need to retract those jacks, we'll just hold down that retract button for just a second. Our red light will come on indicating retract, and we can hit those buttons again and it will retract those jacks. Now front will run front, rear will run rear, and then if we want to do left or right, it will do those left or right jacks. To take off that retract, you just hold that button down for a second and it will go back. Now auto retract will once again retract everything. And our next one shows us our stroke on our jacks. So the LF and RF, that's left front and right front. So this is the amount that those jacks are extended out, and they only have so much stroke on them depending on what jacks they are. So if we stroke out, we run out of jack, you will get an error letting you know out of stroke. And that means that we need to put some blocks or get on a more level area that it doesn't have any more jack left to level that system, and it will stop the auto level. Same thing, left rear, right rear for our jacks. Also on this system, right whenever you turn it on, You can get your voltage display on there. And if you want to just operate your front landing gears, you just got to the campground, you're trying to disconnect from your truck, you don't have to go into that manual mode. You can go straight into operation by hitting those front jacks right there, and that will operate the landing gears in the front. Same thing if you want to retract them, hold down that retract for a second, and then it will operate once again just the front landing gears. From that point, you go into your auto level and allow the unit to level out. Now, I want to make sure that we're not moving around in the unit while it is auto leveling. It'll take a few minutes to hit that auto level point. Once it says it's complete, then you're free to go ahead and open up your doors and get inside the unit and start setting everything up. On our control center, we have our satellite cable and auxiliary ports for our coax connections. If we have outdoor satellite, we can hook that up. Park cable, we hook that up there, and if we have a third connection we'd like to run through all our TVs, we can hook that up right there. We have our quick connect right here for our blue coiled hose. We can hook up a spray port there. This coax port on the side here runs directly to our outside TV that we can go ahead and hook whatever we want directly to that as well. We have a switch over here for our front cap lights and our slide lights. And we have another switch up in the top right corner, kind of hard to see. That is our water pump. That 12-volt water pump will pull from our onboard water storage, and it will supply water to our faucets on the inside in the event that we have actual water in that tank. We'll talk about how to fill that in a second. Our other option is our city water connection. Our city water connection is right here. This is where we would hook that water hose up. If we have a bib at the campground, we can hook that water hose up, turn it on. That will supply water to our fixtures. So if you didn't have that, you want to fill your fresh tank and use that water pump. Right here we have the combination of all the different options for how our water can go out into our unit. So we have our dry camping. So this would be if we have already filled our tank, we would go ahead and turn it to here. We turn that water pump on and it will pull from that tank. Next one is our power fill tank. We would have it in this option here to be able to fill that tank through that city water connection there. Now that onboard storage, once you add water to it, that does add more weight to our unit. If we don't want it, there is a valve underneath that we can go ahead and pull that and drain that water out. We don't want any more than what we need because of the added extra weight, and we don't want to leave it in there too long because that water will become stagnant over time. If we have a city water connection at the campsite, we can go ahead and hook that hose up right here, turn it to this configuration, and then we have our city water directly out to all of our stuff. Winterization option would pull from right here into our unit, and that end of that hose would need to go into a bottle of RV antifreeze. This is to be able to winterize your unit. There are more steps to this process. You can find that in your owner's manual or in our video on HAP's Helpful Hacks. Our last one is siphon sanitize to tank, which would be this configuration here. That is to sanitize that onboard water storage tank. You could do a mixture of bleach and water into that tank to go ahead and sanitize it and clean it out. Our next option over here is our black tank flush. That is to go ahead and flush out that sewage system out of our black tank. We would hook that up. We'll talk a little more about that when we get to our tank system. We do have a gray tank valve right here for that secondary gray tank outlet over here. Once again, we will go over the gray and black tanks when we get to those outlets. And we have a GFCI protected outlet right here on the side. And down below your control center, you'll see your valves for your gray and black tank. We'll elaborate more on that when we get to our dump station. Behind our pass-through, we have our Girard tankless water heater and our Dometic furnace, both 12-volt powered and needing gas in order to operate. Next, we'll talk about our sewage system down below. Right, so we have our dump station here. This is where we'll hook our sewer hose up and go to either a port at the campsite or at a dump station. You're also going to see a red and blue line back there with valves. Those are your low point drains we would use for winterization. We have more information for that in your owner's manual or our HAP's Helpful Hack page with our other videos. So our dump station here, we have our hose hooked up. We can leave our gray valves open all the time, let that water drain out, because of course those tanks fill up a lot quicker when we have showers, sinks, so on and so forth. So gray is showers, sinks, that water fairly clean, less debris. Our black tank, however, we need to leave those valves closed all the time because we have sewage in there. If we let the water out, that sewage will dry up in that tank. So leave that valve closed till we're ready to dump. When we are ready to dump, of course, we have our hose hooked up. We pull that valve, let it start emptying out. We hook our water hose up to our black tank flush in there, turn it on, and that'll send water to a jet port on the other side, help push all that debris down over here and flush out your tank. Now once you're satisfied, you turn off the black tank flush, close your valve, go on the inside, go to your toilet and hold down that pedal and add several gallons of fresh clean water in there along with your chemicals. Now any debris that may still be sticking to the walls, stuff will kind of get knocked down while you're traveling down the road. The chemicals will help decay anything that's left in there. We always want to keep fresh clean water in there when we're not in use so that stuff doesn't dry up. We have more pro tips in our HAPS Helpful Hacks section under Black Tank Flush. That'll lead you to some other ideas on how to flush your tank. This is how the owner manual is going to tell you how to do it. We got those pro tips there. Go check them out. Right in front of our axle, of course, we do have our fresh tank drain right there to be able to drain out the fresh tank. We can lose some weight if we drop that out of there, and of course we don't want to have that water sitting in there for an extended period of time because it will become stagnant. We're going to notice our rear leveler right here. We can override that one by pulling that black plug out right there, disconnecting our 12 volts from it, putting a socket in there attached to a drill, and we can automatically retract that system with the drill in the event we need to override it. So our slide out is an electric slide. It's a rack and pinion. That means the motor is ran in under our underbelly. We can't see it, but we do have an access hole in the J-wrap on the other side. We can stick a crank handle in and manually run that slide out in the event that we have an issue. Down below here too, we have another gray tank port right here with a gray tank valve. We do have two gray tanks on this system. That one, once again, you can leave open all the time. You would run those two hoses together in a Y pipe to that station. Of course, we are pre-wired for our Furrion backup camera, powered by our running lights. When we turn them on our towing vehicle, that will power up that camera so we can see behind us while we're traveling down the road or backing up. Easy upgrade, it is already pre-wired right there. Of course, we have our rear storage compartment. We have our 50 amp service plug right here. That's going to provide power to our unit. We insert it, turn it to the right, lock it in. We have that retainer ring. Good idea to tighten that up on there so kids can't accidentally pull it out. When we plug this in, we want to plug it in here first and then into our power pole over on the side. We want to reduce arcing here by plugging it in here first. We also want to make sure our ACs are off so we don't cause any surges to our appliances. We also have our factory supplied ladder back here, which is great because we need to gain access to our roof, check the ceiling around all of our vents. We also need to check the ceiling around our trim, our lights, our windows, so on and so forth, to make sure nothing's cracking, peeling, or deteriorating, and if it is, clean it and reseal over it. This is in your owner's manual. You need to do this every 60 to 90 days, and it is considered customer maintenance. So make sure we're staying on top of that and taking care of this on a regular basis. Otherwise, you're going to allow water in your unit and cause damage that manufacturer isn't going to cover. We also need to clean our roof twice a year, and it's a good idea to check it after trips to make sure no low-lying tree limbs have caused any damage. So on the passenger side of our unit, first compartment, once again, that second LP tank, our pass-through bay right here for storage, and then we have our 12-volt awning along with our 12-volt powered awning lights. Now, we'll keep saying 12-volt components. We'll say it quite a few times that we do have a 12-volt and a 110 fuse panel and a breaker panel on the interior. We're going to show you where to go if these components ever stop working. First place we want to go for troubleshooting. But as for our awning, it is mainly a sunshade. We can use it for a rain shade, for light rain, stuff like that. We're going to get some AC condensation, probably some light dew on there. But anytime we put it out, we need to make sure we pitched it either to the front or the back, meaning we leaned it. We can easily do that by grabbing this arm right here and just pulling it down. Now we've leaned our awning to the front. The awning arm in the back does the same thing. We would go ahead and just push this one up and do the back instead of the front, but you only want to do one of them. Now, anytime we have a bad storm coming in, windstorm, anything like that, heavy rains, we need to go ahead and pull this in. There's too much water that can accumulate on here and it can collapse. So we want to be cautious of that because that's not something the manufacturer is going to cover if it's due to damage of something in that nature. If you're leaving your campsite for an extended period of time, make sure you roll that awning in. Better safe than sorry. All right, under our awning, we have our outdoor cable satellite hookup as well as our GFCI protected outlet out here for that outdoor TV. We're gonna have several of those around all of our wet locations. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to our breaker panel. We have our vent over here that is over our hood range in the kitchen. We wanna make sure that the two tabs on that are open so that air will actually ventilate out. When we store it, we can go ahead and keep it closed. to prevent insects and stuff from getting in there. We have our hole right here in the J-wrap. This one is for our spare tire. If we look through there, we see that bolt sticking out of the frame. That's to drop that spare tire down. We have one a little bit lower further down. That one is for the override for that rear slide out on the other side. That'd be that one that we stick our crank handle in for both holes, and we can go ahead and operate it to do the task. Lastly, you're going to have a quick connect LP line right down there at the bottom for a gas grill or something, whatever connection you want, and you're going to pull off of those propane tanks in the front. It does have an on-off lever on there. That lever is going to have to be off in order to make that quick connect initiate in there. Turn it back on for flow. All right, we have our entry door. It is going to have some resistance on it. That's due to our friction controlled hinges up there. Keep the wind from slamming that door shut or open, or the kids, one of the two. We also have our solid steps right here, pretty easy to store. Just lift them up, pull that blue lever and make sure it's latched in. Want to make sure this entry door is open all the way so this bracket here doesn't tear up our screen. When we let it down, we pull that blue lever again and drop it down. Now, one thing we want to notice is we have these silver tabs on each side, and we can use that to level our stairs. After we've run through the auto level operation on our unit, we want to come over here and level our steps. We go ahead, we flip them down like this, we push that silver tab in, and we can adjust those legs in and out to make sure that they are level. We're doing that for two reasons. We want a good flush surface right here for our door. Whenever it closes, it doesn't get bound up. We don't have any gaps. It's fully sealed. The other reason is we want to make sure that we don't have any contact with the frame of our steps to the bottom frame of our door, causing any damage there. On our control center here, we can see that we have our fresh tank, black tank, gray tanks right there, the level of all those, as well as our battery level here. This is called a Compass Connect. It's by Grand Design, and we can download the app and Bluetooth it to our phone so we can see some of this stuff, operate some of this stuff from our phone as well. We would use that Bluetooth Connect button there. We have our ceiling lights, awning lights, porch lights, tank heaters. That is a 12-volt mat on our tanks. We would use that as a heater during extreme temperatures to help keep those tanks from freezing up. Have our 12-volt water pump that we would use to pull out of water out of that fresh tank to our fixtures in the event we don't have a city water connection. That water pump can be left off when you do have the city water connection. Keep in mind, when you are running this pump, it is an on-demand pump. So whenever you have those fixtures on, you're probably going to hear it vibrating and pumping that water out. Perfectly normal. When you turn those fixtures off, it'll run for a couple more seconds, priming that system, and then it should shut off. If you're certain all your fixtures are off and you still hear it vibrating, you want to come over here, turn that pump off. Your tank may be empty. That could burn the pump up if you don't pay attention to that. And then also you could have a leak in your unit, so you want to verify and investigate, turn it off, and then go investigate. We have our awning and our slide out in and out controls right there. All 12-volt power components. Once again, we'll talk about where that 12-volt fuse panel is here shortly. Down below that, we have our Furrion thermostat, light switch for our hallway. We'll go over the operation of that thermostat right now. We'll start with our cool option first. Our cool will cool the air throughout our unit. We, of course, set our thermostat to whatever point we want it to be, and we have our fan speed options. We have low and high. For low and high, that fan will run all the time. Now, whenever we want that fan to cut off, whenever the compressor cuts off, much like we likely do at home, we have it on auto. That system will shut off and on with the compressor. Our next mode is our heat mode. Our heat mode activates our gas-powered furnace on our unit. We choose our set point, and our heater will come on whenever necessary. There is fan speeds on here, but it does not change the fan speed on that furnace. It is a single fan speed on there controlled by the furnace board. Our next mode is our fan mode. Our fan mode simply circulates air throughout our unit without cooling it or anything. This will come out of our rooftop air, and we can just change from high to low to control that fan speed if we wish. That fan will stay on the entire time when we have it in our fan mode. Our last mode is our dry mode. Our dry mode is like a dehumidifier. We can choose our set point, and it will cool our unit down to that set point, and it will continue to cool past that, but alternate every 6 to 10 minutes off and on. That way it doesn't drop that temperature too low and freeze you out of the unit, but it still dries the air in your unit. Another thing to note with our furnace is that the air is going to come out of the vents on the floor. It's not going to come out of the rooftop air. Your only rooftop air is going to be your fan and your cool and your dry. Your heat will come out of those floor vents from the furnace. Right next to our stairs, if we pull our couch out a little bit, we'll have that 12-volt panel right here with all our fuses. We have our 110 breakers right there. We'll notice on our 110 breakers down at the bottom, you're going to notice a little white button down there. That is our GFCI breaker. That's going to control the breaker in all those wet locations. And most oftentimes that is tripped due to too much stuff on the line, griddles, coffee pots, so on and so forth. So that thing may trip right off the back. If you go and plug some of those items and come try to reset it again, it can also happen because the outlets are wet, so make sure they're not wet either. The white button on there is our test button if we want to test that breaker. Just before we enter our kitchen, on this right of our door, we do have our LP detector that's going to let us know of any high levels of LP that are in our camper in order to evacuate. We do have an alarm on here. We want to test that alarm before we go camping. The green light on here shows that it is powered up. It is hardwired into our battery system, so it'll be on all the time. It does have an expiration on it, so you need to take note of that either on the front or the back of it. It'll have that expiration and when we need to change it out. We're also going to have a CO and a smoke detector in our unit too, both powered by that 9-volt battery. We need to test the alarm on those, as well as make sure that battery is fully powered. All right, for entertainment, we have our Jensen radio right here that'll control our speakers inside and out. We also have our TV. For your TV, you're going to have the option for antenna, cable, satellite. Your antenna and cable will both be on the same coax. We need to keep in mind we have an antenna booster on our unit. It'll be behind this TV right here. It's a little red button on there, and that button will turn a light off and on. That light indicates our antenna booster. When we're searching for antenna channels, we want that booster on so it'll pick up more channels in our area. When we are searching for cable channels, because the campground has a cable outlet, we have our coax hooked up, we need to turn that off so it doesn't scramble the channels. Satellite option will be, of course, if you have a rooftop or a satellite that you can move around, that would go to the receiver and then an HDMI to the TV. Now here in the kitchen we have our 110 microwave, our Furrion cooktop. It does have a glass top to it for more counter space. This is also how it needs to be when we travel. We can flip that up when we are ready to cook, and we have access to our burners underneath. Now here we have our knobs for each individual burner. We'll turn that knob to the flame icon right there, crank it. Of course our propane does need to be on. That fixture will light. We can turn high to low, whatever we want. Whenever we do turn these knobs on, they do turn red. Even if you turn your little switch over, that is red to let you know that it is on and emitting gas. Kids like to play with stuff. It's a good signal that it needs to be turned off if not in use. Now, a particular thing about our propane is we can get air in our lines. This happens because either we changed our tanks out because we ran out, or when we stored our unit, we stored it with our gas off, which is perfectly normal and suggested. So when you turn that gas on, you're going to end up with air in that system. Really easy issue to fix. We come over here, we light our stove. It may take a little bit of time, but we light it, let it run for about 30 to 60 seconds, and we're good to go. Now, oftentimes, if we don't do that, it will cause either our furnace or our water heater to go into error because it's trying to light air rather than gas. So best to come over here and light stovetop right after you pull your unit out from storage or you change your tanks. You're only going to have to do it that one time. After you bled the air out, you're fine until you turn your tanks off or you ran out of gas. Down below that, we'll have our oven. We turn the same thing to that flame icon. We go ahead and crank on our igniter until it lights. We do have to be holding this button in during that period of trying to ignite it. Once it's lit, we hold it down for another 15 seconds or so, then we can let off and turn to our temperature. That pilot should stay lit, and then that burner tube should go ahead and light up, and we're ready to cook. Of course, we have our dinette booth that can drop down into more sleeping area. We remove those two poles. The table can sit on the bumper. We take our cushions, put it on top for more sleeping. We have our 12-volt Furrion fridge and freezer controlled by our temperature knob right here at the bottom. It can go from off to cold to colder, and you'll also find an off-grid option on there too. That off-grid option is to reduce the amount of 12-volt power it's consuming. So if you're dry docking somewhere, you're working off of solar or battery power, we want to go to that off-grid option so it will reduce the amount of voltage that we're using, but we also want to keep in mind we don't want to open and close this fridge too much because it's not going to be working as hard to keep your goods cold. Another important thing about our refrigerator is when we turn it off to defrost our system, we want to make sure that we defrost this freezer, get all the water out of it, wipe down our fridge, let everything air dry, because if any water is left in here and it drains out even with our doors closed, it will damage our wood components around our refrigerator, and manufacturers aren't going to participate in that kind of repair. So make sure we're doing all that. It'll also reduce mold and mildew from developing in there as well. In our double over double bunk area right here, not much to go over. 2 bunkhouses, closet. We do have a vent right there in the top. Here we are in our bathroom. In our shower, we have our standard hot cold faucet as well as an on-off button on the shower head. That's generally used whenever you don't have a dump station or you don't have city water. You're trying to conserve the amount of water you put into your gray tank as well as the amount of water you use out of your fresh tank system. So it's just an easier way to turn that water off and on in between showering off and lathering up. We can go ahead and just hit that button up there versus trying to find the sweet spot for the hot water on our faucet. If you want to use it, you can. If you don't have to. You have that dump station in city water, you don't need to. Beyond that, we do have a vent up in the ceiling with a fan on it. When you flip that switch right there, kick our 12-volt fan on. We want to emit any humidity and stuff out of here to help reduce the risk for mold and mildew in this bathroom. Our toilet right here, pretty standard. We have a valve there. We're going to push it to go ahead and flush anything down. Only things we're putting in there is number 1, which is your liquids, right? We put that in there. We can just hit the pedal and flush. Number 2, which is your solids. We want to make sure we fill that bowl about half to 3/4 of the way with water so we have enough to actually push those solids down to your black tank and not have any clogging in your system. In order to do that, barely push that pedal down right there and water will start coming out into that bowl and we can go ahead and fill it up. Number 3 is going to be RV toilet paper only. We want to make sure we get appropriate toilet paper so it degrades properly in that tank and doesn't cause any clogging whenever you go to flush it out. Last thing is our chemicals. Our chemicals help degrade whatever deposits are in there, and they also make it smell nice. In our bathroom, we also have our Furrion tankless water heater. We'll go over the operation of that right now. In our bathroom, we'll see our Furrion tankless control center. Pretty simple. We have our power on, off and on, kick it on. That's going to be our set point for our water. We can change that by hitting our up and down buttons right there. Our indicators right here, power, Fahrenheit, Celsius. If we want to change one to the other, we hit that bottom right button, and flame. Flame is only going to kick on whenever we turn that hot water on, indicating that system is working. And once again, on demand, it'll only come on whenever we have that hot water on. Here in our bedroom, not much to go over. You do have a separate AC in here along with a separate thermostat. This one's going to control just this AC. Your one in the front is heat and AC for that rear AC. The heat is covered for the entire unit. Now both of your ACs are going to have this sealing assembly. You're going to notice a vent on here. This is called your quick dump valve. If we open that up, it forces air out here so we can cool this area off quickly. We close it so air can circulate through our rooftop sealing ducts right here. The last thing on here is our 2 tabs right here. We pull those down so we can clean that filter, and want to make sure we're doing that on a regular basis so it doesn't reduce the airflow to our AC. We have our other satellite cable hookup right here with our TV backer. The only place you're going to find that antenna boost is in the living room. That will cover all of your TVs. That wraps up everything on our reflection.
Well, we hope you found that resourceful, but wait, there's more information on our Great American RV YouTube channel. This channel right here, find the playlist Hap's Helpful Hacks. We go over different products in this unit and we'll take a deeper dive with more diagnostics, more information, as well as helpful tips when you're out camping. Tell your buddies, tell your friends, like, share, subscribe, do all those awesome things on YouTube, TikTok, wherever you found us. And keep watching here at Great American RV SuperStores, where we bring the how-to you.